as I saw my father walk up behind the men. For a moment, it was so hard for me to breathe. How I hated this man. I just stood looking to him. I am John Sanders, and I do not have any property of the throne. So your being here is violation to decree. As my officer stated, my father said, I remained next to Danny. I do not think the fool even recognized me. Sir, I am Danny Lee. The courtesan Jolene is my property. I bid you return her to me. He told my father, I believe that a lot of you are insane. My sister needs to get a life. Perhaps she needs a collar herself for talking the lot of you into posing as executive prince. You are such a fool. Return, Jolene, and let us be. I growled to him with anger and fire within me. He looked to me. Patsy, I almost did not recognize you. Where's your collar? I intended for you to be in, he asked. I took a deep breath. I said nothing, just stared at him. I am sure Jolene has told you who her owner is. Danny said, Yes, well, Jolene and Liza are known to perjure themselves to get their way. Quite often. If you must know, she was stolen from me, and now I have her back. Therefore, she is my property, my father said to Danny, then looked to me. As you are also. I had you collared for your disobedience. Now you believe to be free, and in favor of the garden authority. Such fools. He turned to Danny. I challenge you for what belongs to me. Leave, returning what is mine to me, my father said, and snapped his fingers, and before I knew or any of us knew what happened, I was pulled away from Danny, and 3 men had a hold of me and a dagger to my neck. Others with swords drawn surrounded the others. Do not be foolish. One motion, and your pretty little co-singer loses her head, my father said, pulling his sword. Danny, I called. It is you who needs to not be stupid. By order of the high priest, release us, Scott said. Challenge me, boy, my father said to Danny. We do not fight with our people. As my brother said, in the name of Louis Humberg, our high priest, release us, Danny said, and I watched as my father swung and Danny pulled his sword, blocking him. I watched as they fought, and the swords meet. And then I could not really tell you what had happened. However, Danny's sword flew from his hand, and my father's sword was intervened by Scott's sword, and the ones about Scott were on the ground. This happened all in a blink of an eye. Surrender, Scott said as he stood there. I watched as my father moved his sword quickly, and Scott pushed Danny from him, and he began to fight with my father. Danny moved, looking for his sword. Then in a blink, Danny had it once again in his hand. I will not. Take them, I heard my father say, and before long all was fighting. Scott, we cannot do this without a life taken. I would rather those lives not be ours, Mike called out as I could do nothing yet remain there with the 3 men around me. Then take them, I heard Scott call, and then I watched as my father laid headless on the ground at Scott's feet. He was good. His abilities outshined mine, Danny said. Yes, however, not mine. You almost lost your head, little brother, Scott said, and looked to the men that held me, and they stepped back and moved to one knee. Now, foolish is as foolish does. You going to follow your great lord into the path of Asgard? Are you going to get me the girl? Scott said, pointing with his sword to one of the men. I watched as he took off running, and Sue returned with Jolene. She ran to me crying. Her face was black and blue. He said he would see me breathe no more. He said he would see the both of us breathe no more. What was wrong with him? What did I do that's so bad? How did I disobey? Jolene said, crying and rambling. You are safe. Calm down. You did nothing. He was just sick, stricken with grief, I said as I held her. She looked about and saw the men and our father. She placed her face back on my shoulder and then moved to her knees and was crying. I watched Danny move over to her and pull her up and took her into his arms. I am getting her back to camp. She needs to rest, he said, holding her in his arms. Scott nodded. Mike and I will take care of the situation. Send Lorelei to us, and the rest of you head back to Atlantis, Scott said. Danny nodded and motioned to me. I walked with him as he carried Jolene in his arms. Her head was on his shoulder and she was crying. When we returned to camp, I told Liza what had happened. She was relieved. We were all safe, and as Scott said, we started back to Atlantis. Okay, we are on chapter 25. I believe we are halfway through the story. Not really sure. Working at the tavern, writing songs, making recordings, and on occasion missing Danny. My life was a routine deal. I did the same thing every day. I always stayed on a schedule. Most of the time I was at the tavern. I was on stage just messing around with Teresa and Karen. We were practicing for tonight's performance when Danny and a lot of others came in. And I mean a lot of others. I watched as they moved 2 long tables at the left of the stage. I stood there watching them rearrange the tables. After they were finished, Danny looked up to me. He motioned me to him. I handed Karen the mic and moved off the stage. I walked over to Danny. He placed his arms about me and kissed my lips. Greetings, my darling, he said cheerfully. I looked at all that was sitting at the table as the girl moved over taking their orders. Now, a few of them I knew, and a lot of them I did not know. I looked to the people, then back to Danny. Now, the ones sitting at the table that I knew were Mike and Lorelei, Scott, Alex, and Peter. The others I really had no idea. There was 21 people there. I found out who they were when Tony came walking over. So, tell me, is there a circle meeting held at the tavern this day? And why was I not informed? Tony said, laughing. Hey, sweetheart, we just decided to invade you. One of the females said, laughing. I would soon find out it was Danny's sister, Dolores. Actually, it was Danny's idea. We were going to have lunch and gripe about Father. He suggested we come here, another said, and I found out her name was Brenda. Tony laughed. There goes the business day, he said, and moved back from them, and they all started laughing. Patsy, meet the Sultan Circle, Danny said, waving to those there. Or what is left of it, one said. I did not know. Pa, you have a point there, Scott laughed. All right, Patsy, those you do not know, Danny said, waving his hand to those there as he said their names. My brothers, Travis, John, Paul, and Lonnie, Danny said. Anthony, John said. All right, today is Anthony. Tomorrow it will be John again. Danny laughed, and so did the others. Keep it up, little brother, John Anthony said. Danny laughed. I looked to each one as I smiled, standing beside Danny, and a girl served what they had ordered. Now, my sisters, Dolores, Michelle, Janice, Angela, Brenda, Rachel, Teresa, and Laura Lee. my brother's wives. Lorelai, you know, is Mike's. Mary is Alex's. Betty is Peter's. Renee is Travis's. And Deborah is John Anthony's. Danny smirked when he said John's name. Nice to meet you all, I replied. Oh, this is Patsy Lee, he said, and I took a bow. I love your music, Brenda said, and I felt my face get red. Thank you. I smiled and sat at the table beside Danny. I never actually knew who was a part of that circle. I had never seen them all in one place. I sat there for a while listening to them talk. Father is going to change order of the circle this year, as Emmett and Emily are of age to join it, John had said. I still say he's too young to hold fourth position, Peter said. He may be too young, however, with his abilities, that is where he belongs, Alex spoke up, saying. Then about 8 kids ran into the tavern. You know, I am not a messenger boy, Emmett said, coming up to the table with Emmy and Law. I looked to them and laughed. You sure about that, E? Danny asked. Yep. Father said he could not get a hold of any of you. I told him because you were having a gathering and did not invite me, Emmett told them, and I laughed. Yes, well, we would have invited you, however, you are too busy causing trouble, Mike told him. I am not causing trouble, I am delivering a message, Emmett told them. Deliver the message and get lost, Peter spoke up and said, and then Peter fell out of his chair and slid back across the floor and hit his head on the bar, and all started to laugh besides the female that stood and moved quickly over to him and down to her knees. Emmett, Scott called to him. That should shut him up for a while. Now, Emmett started to say when Peter rushed over towards Emmett. Paul and Danny stood and grabbed Peter. Do not do it, Danny told him. Peter gave Emmett a look and made a mad sound, and Paul and Danny lost a hold of Peter. I looked at Emmett, watching him and his friend Law and sister Emmy stare down Peter. They all had joined hands. He grabbed the hand of the female who was his wife and stormed out of the tavern. Emmett, you really need to put an end to that, Dolores told him. He just will not leave me alone. I have done nothing to him, Emmett said. Yes, you have. Soon as Father reorders the circle, you take his position in the circle, Travis spoke up and said. That is not my fault, that is Father's, Emmett said. He holds you in contempt for it, Brenda said. You do not hold me, and I take your position, Emmy spoke up, saying, Right, little sister, you are more than welcome to it. Brenda laughed. Emmett, what is the message you are not the messenger boy to give us? Scott asked. Father said, when and if'n I find you, to tell you all to get your arses to Valhalla immediately, Emmett said. Daddy did not say arses, Emmy said, and they laughed. They all stood and watched them place the tables back the way they were, and then Danny kissed me, and they all left, even the kids. That night, when I arrived at the cottage, Danny and Paul were in the gathering. As I walked in, I smiled and moved over to Danny and leaned to kiss him. He pulled me onto his lap. I laughed and looked to Paul. However, I did not remember his name. Greetings, I said. Greetings, Miss Patsy Lee, he laughed. What is so funny? I asked. Nothing. Just never thought that one woman could catch his heart as you have, he said. I laughed. Where's Jolene? I asked Danny, as she was always in the gathering when I got home. She took out of here as we entered. I am not sure what she is up to. Danny had told me. Brian was standing to the side, and I looked to him. Want to go find my little sister? I asked him. Only if you say please, he teased. Please, I smiled. He moved out of the gathering. I looked to Danny. Everything all right with your father? I asked. Yes. No. He is still on Scott to prepare him for the millennium. Scott insists he places Odin's mountain in his arse, and he also needs us to go to the Castle Dean and speak to Father Adrian. It seems they have had some trouble. Danny said, How long will you be gone, and when are you leaving? I asked as Jolene came into the room and placed her head to the floor, and I turned to look at her. I am not sure. Depends on what is going on, actually. What is she doing? Danny asked as he looked at Jolene funny. I do not know, I laughed. Jo, what are you doing? I asked her. Nothing, she said quickly. Are you all right? I asked, watching her. Yes, she replied. Raise up, Danny told her. Now she was funny, because she turned her back to us. As we sat on the sofa and raised. Jolene, what are you doing? I asked. Nothing, she said. Jo, turn around, I told her. No, she said, and I laughed even more. Perhaps she is shy. Sorry. Perhaps she is shy, Paul said and stood. I watched him move up behind her and place her hands on her shoulders. You know, I saw you when you ran past me. I know what you look like even from the back of your head, he said, and I assumed they knew one another. A girl is not speaking to a master, she told him, and I looked at Danny, and he laughed with a shrug of his shoulders. Why not? It was not I who ran away, it was you, he told her, and I watched as he raised her to her feet and turned her about. She looked at him and then away. A girl, she started to say, and then went silent. A girl what? Paul asked. She looked to me and Danny. My master, may your girl leave now? She asked Danny. I am not the one that called you in here, he laughed. Mistress, she then asked, and I blinked. You know the prince? I asked, as I had forgotten his name. Yes, mistress. May a girl leave now? She had asked. Funny thing is, all this was, Jolene never actually spoke Slavic, and did not address me as mistress. Also, she was not moving away from Danny's brother. I was really curious as to what was going on now. Pa, I will bite. How do you know her? Danny asked. She was a girl at the North Tavern in Trey, and I asked to purchase her, and the next day she took off. He laughed, and I watched as he moved over to her. As he moved her over to where we all were and set her on his lap. She moved with him without protest. I watched and smiled. I got caught, she told Paul. He was not by my word. I told them to let you go. I was waiting for you to return, he told her. I might had, if in fact I knew where to find you. I did return to your compartment. However, you were not there, she told him. Danny, I take it bought you from the market? Paul asked. No, I escaped after I was caught and joined back with Diane and the others. My master persuaded them into giving me to him, and that is how my master received me, she told him. Then, as if he remembered what I had asked Brian, Paul looked to me. She is really your sister? He asked. Yes, she is. Danny found her for me. We were separated as children after our father sold us into Thornton. I told him. I watched her lean into him. She looked content for someone that wanted to leave the room. She had told me something about that. I never thought her Patsy was a Southern Tavern Patsy Lee, Paul said. So you tried to buy her from the tavern? Danny asked. Nah, I did buy her. That is why the village guards did not go looking for her. She was my property, and I told them to let her be. He shrugged. Danny started to laugh. Paul then looked to Jolene. Why did you run? I told you I was coming back to get you, he asked her. I thought you were crazy. I could not see what you saw in a Thornton. A used one at that, and also you made me feel wrong, she told him, placing her head on his shoulder. How did I make you feel wrong? He asked her. You made me feel as if you cared. And I knew not who you were, and still do not, she told him. Did it matter who or what I was? I owned you, he told her. Yes, you owned me, however you did not return. And it had been about a week, and the owner allowed another in my area. He had not the right, as I was no longer his. I did not like the others touching me, and I felt you gave your consent. So I was upset with you. Also, and so I escaped, she told him. I did not give my consent, and I did not know he was allowing you to be used after I purchased you, he told her. It matters not, overdone and gone, she told him, and started to move from his lap. No, remain where you are. I am Executive Prince Paul Louis Humberg. Now you know who I am, he told her. Yes, I am an owned rose-branded Thornton that you now do not own. So let me up, she said. Yes, you're right. I do not own you. And I am sure you're not for sale, he said, and still did not let her up. Danny, you own her. Let me take this arrogant courtesan out for the night. Let her remain with me at my cottage for the night, Paul then said, and I watched Jolene give him the most surprised look. I would, however, you would have to ask her sister, as I have given her to her, he said and laughed. If she wants you to, you may, I told him. Good. I get a choice. I choose not to see you or be with you, she said, and I just listened to them. Why? He asked her. Because I do not like the way you make me feel. Then I do like it. However, I don't want it, she told him. You are perjuring yourself, he informed her. You perjured yourself to me, she told him. I did no such thing, he told her. You said you would be back to get me, and you did not, she told him. You little shit, you ran away, he told her. You could have found me. Instead, you told the guards to not look, she told him. I was giving you time, he told her. Time for what? Listen to us. You are arguing with a courtesan, she told him, and I watched as she started to cry, and I was not sure how to feel. She never told me anything about Paul. Patsy, allow her to stay with me, he asked. No, Patsy, she said, and I could read in her she wanted to go with him. Jolene, you will go with Prince Paul, I told her. She looked to me with a hurt look. However, she was wanting to be with him. It was odd how I could sense this. My abilities were getting stronger as I focused on what my little sister really wanted. I do not want to, she told me. I know. However, it is not your choice to make. He wishes you, and your master does not mind, so you will go with him. I told her. Fine, I will get ready then, she said, and he still let her not off his lap. There is nothing you need. You are not leaving my sight as for right now. I have found you, and I will not lose you again. You will try and run, he told her, and I was surprised at what he said. I could not understand her. She wanted to be with him, yet she kept saying she did not. Okay, we are on chapter 26. And if this cuts out, we will start from where it ends. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and click the bell at the end. No, click the bell so that YouTube will let you know when I put out the next video. The next video will be video 11. And I'm not sure what chapters it'll be. Not until I find out if this is going to stop again. But if it does stop, then we'll take up from where we left off. And in that case, until we meet again, mwah, Lord be with you. Now, back to the story until we get cut off. Chapter 26. The following day, I was in the garden at the cottage when Jolene came home. She came into the garden and looked to me. At first, she had a sad look on her face. You upset with me? I asked her. She shook her head no. She moved over and sat with me. I smiled to her. Do you like him? I asked her. Yes, I actually loved him, she told me. He seems to like you, I told her. Now I know who he is. What would he want with me? She said sadly. What did he say to you? I asked her. He said now that he has found me, there was no escape for me, she said. You never mentioned Paul, I told her. I did not tell you after I was sold from Samuel Drillin, and after the life taken of the one who bought me, I was sold to the North Tavern. I served as a used Dinah. One night this master came in and requested one of the Dinahs to be with him for a week. Passing. She thought for a minute. I am really not sure what he wanted. Actually, anyway, he paid coin to have me stay at his compartment and serve him. That master was Paul. I would keep the compartment clean for him and be at his service if he needed me. This was the passing of about 3-year cycles. When he came into tray, I was taken to his compartment. I liked him. He made me feel special, as if I actually had an owner once again. One that cared for me as a courtesan and not just as property to gain coin from. Anyway, he told me one day that he was going to go and purchase me, and then I could remain at his compartment girl. He said he was going to gold collar me. However, when he took me back to the tavern and left, he did not return the next day to get me. When I asked the owner about it, he told me that was the affair of the free, and in so many words I need not know what the free was doing. Need I only obey? As she spoke, she started to cry. Then one night I was told I was to once again serve. I gathered the master was untruthful, and he really did not give coin for me, or else the owner would not have me to serve. So that night I snuck out of the tavern and ran into the forest, where I found the gypsies. At first they were going to take me back. Then they decided to keep me as a laborer Dinah. After they found out I was good with the sword and could take care of myself, they allowed me to join. I returned to Trey at night and to the master's compartment. I really did not know why or what I was thinking. However, that is where I first got caught. He was not there, and his guards captured me.